Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Travis. As you can tell, I'm not at church. I'm here at my house in Reebok's workroom. You can see some of her stuff over here. And the reason I'm not at church, the reason I'm at home, is because we're kicking off our daily devotion series on Galatians today. So this isn't going to be something that's super in-depth. It's going to be a little bit more informal, right? Hence the hockey jersey and working from home. But the point of this is to give you guys a little push in your devotion life. If you're struggling, if you're bored, if you can't get ready to go. Sorry, I just heard my dog come in. Then you can do this. You can listen to these videos, and hopefully it'll be a great jumping off point for you. But before we get into it, I just wanted to let you guys know that we really miss you. The best part of youth ministry is working with youth and talking to you guys about Jesus. And so not being able to do that in person is tough. It's not fun. So we can't wait until we can all get together again. But in the meantime, this will have to do. But if you were ever bored or not bored and you just want to text or call or FaceTime, please feel free to do that. So right now, we're going to start off with a question that I want you guys to answer in the comments, or if you're watching this on Instagram, we'll put it in the story. Dean will have to do that because I don't know how. But what is your favorite worship song? You can list 2, maybe 3. And we're going to put together a Spotify playlist, so maybe you guys can listen to your favorite worship songs while we're doing these devotions together. So there's another question at the end. It's going to be an either or. That's how we do things. And then also the prayer prompt for today is to pray for all the doctors and scientists looking for a cure for the coronavirus. So today we're going to kick off our series in Galatians, but we're not going to start in Galatians 1. We're actually going to look at the context of the book of Galatians. So I had a seminary professor that liked to say that is context king? No, context isn't king. Elvis is king, but context is very important. If you didn't think that was funny, tell it to your grandma or to your mom and dad. They'll probably laugh. So what are some good resources for knowing the context? So first off, a study Bible like this one is phenomenal. So this is where I got a lot of my notes for. As you can tell, this is pretty bulky. I don't carry it around very often. I have a smaller Bible that I take to church. But the chapters or the information at the beginning of each book is so good in study Bibles. So that's an ESV study Bible. I know some of you guys have Reformation study Bibles, or maybe like a study Bible for girls or for guys, whatever. But read those. They're super important. Also, another great resource is called BibleProject.com. So I really like their videos. We've actually watched a couple in youth, but they give a really good overview of the entire story of each book. And they're fun videos. They do cool little cartoon drawings. So go, I'll put a link somewhere, so check those out. It's BibleProject.com. Alright, so like I said, we're starting in Galatians. If you don't know where that is, if you start with the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, then you have the book of Acts, and then Romans, then 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians, and then you get to Galatians. So, as you probably know, or maybe not, Paul wrote this letter to the Galatians. And pretty obvious who's he writing to, right? Who's the audience? It's the church in Galatia. And if I can figure out how, I'll try to put that on a map. But it's in modern day Turkey. It's in the south. But he's writing to those churches. And now, so when did he write it? Well, it was after his first missionary trip, right? Because there's churches there, so he had to go there and plant the churches. So it's after that, but it's probably before the Jerusalem Council, which took place in 48 AD. You can read about the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15, and the reason we think it's before the Jerusalem Council takes place is because that would have really helped his argument. So if you're looking for a little bit more study, why don't you go read about the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15 after we're done with this video, because we're going to get into why he wrote, and maybe you can piece together why that would have helped his argument so much, and why it's pretty noticeable that he didn't mention it, and therefore we think he wrote this letter before the council. Alright, so that's the date. This is also the first Pauline letter in the Bible. So he wrote it first. So it's not the first. Romans comes first. But this is the first one historically. Alright, so why did he write it? So he was receiving reports from the people in Galatia that people were persuading converts to accept a different teaching. So a teaching contrary to what Paul had taught them. And this is where we get the verse, if anybody teaches you another gospel, let them be accursed. And he actually says that twice. So he's really serious about it. So who was saying this? Well, they were known as the Judaizers. So they were Jewish Christians teaching that you're saved by your works. And so that could be either through circumcision or that could be through obeying the law. But Paul is going to really stress that you're not saved by circumcision, you're not saved by the law, you're saved through faith alone. And because he stresses this so much, a lot of our spiritual great-great-grandfathers, right, the Luthers and the Calvins, they say that the Galatians is actually really helpful, or was really helpful for them when they started the Reformation, right? Romans gets a lot of credit, Galatians is super important too. So that's who is doing this. So the key themes in Galatians is that we are saved by faith alone. So remember that. It's going to come up a lot. And so Paul weaves this throughout his book. He even goes back to the Old Testament and says, even these Old Testament guys, they were saved by faith alone, not by works, even though a lot of people thought that. And then another key theme, the last one that I want to touch on, is that in Christ we have died to our sins. We bear it no more. But we are completely dead to our sin and alive in Christ. So, those are the themes. We've covered a lot. Let's go over a brief outline real fast. If you have a study Bible, this will be a much more simple outline. So if you want to memorize it, it should be a little bit easier. So first, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5 is the opening. Paul's going to say hey to everybody. Then chapter 1, verse 6 through chapter 2, verse 21. So the end of chapter 2 is the apostolic defense of Paul. So these other teachers were saying, who's this guy? And Paul's going to say, oh, well, actually, kind of a big deal, right? Like apostle of Christ, right? Appointed by God. So he's going to go into that defense and really hit that hard. And then in chapter 3 to chapter 5, verse 12, we see the justification by faith. And that means we're saved by faith alone. He's going to really drive that hard. And then in the second half of chapter 5, so 5:13 through chapter 6, verse 10, is that we live by the Spirit, not by the flesh, right? So we're alive in the Spirit, not controlled by sin anymore. And then finally in chapter 6, verses 11 through 18, you have the closing. So he's just saying bye to people. So that's it. That's the outline. That's a brief, very brief overview of the book of Galatians. We're going to get back into it tomorrow. If you want to, you can go ahead and read the opening, the introduction, because that's what we're going to go through tomorrow. So until then, like I told you, I think at the beginning of the video, we have an either-or question. We're going to ask it on Instagram. We'd love your input too. And it's this. Do you prefer Star Wars or Harry Potter? Or I guess neither. Or something else, like along the same line. Anyways, let us know. We're excited to hear about you. And until next time, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you soon.